The Prime Minister is in trouble over his decision to make Peter Mandelson ambassador to the US. Our heavy vetting, bloodletting and sidestepping correspondent, Jonathan Goodenough, has more. Yes, that's right, choosing Mandelson must be the worst decision that a Prime Minister's made since Liz Truss said, how about we do a budget, but make it smaller? Is it really that bad? Well, no, not really, but over the last few years we've got a bit addicted to the drama, so I'm trying to make the most of it. So is Starmer really in trouble? Well, if his government was rising to expectations, riding high in the polls and expecting a good result in the local elections next week, he could shrug this off as all Westminster bubble nonsense. But as things stand, he's the most hated Prime Minister in history, which is really going some, and his party's chances in the upcoming elections are about as high as Donald Trump's chances of winning the Nobel Prize for Literature, which means that Sir Keir has every reason to say, oh dear. What's that? Sir Keir has every reason to say, oh dear. I'm trying to make it a catchphrase. No, thank you. So Starmer sacked senior civil servant Ollie Robbins, who then gave testimony to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. What did we learn? Well, I learned that Ollie Robbins is not the same person as Ollie Robinson, a former England cricketer, or even Ollie Robinson, a potential England cricketer, or even Ollie Robinson, a former England rugby player. You had to look that last one up. Was it Wikipedia? I would never reveal my sources. Anyway, Ollie Robbins made it clear that Number 10 was extremely keen to appoint Mandelson as ambassador, despite or even because of his sketchy past. Because of? Well, there are suggestions that some in government thought that Mandelson's forays into the world of Jeffrey Epstein and co. would actually help ingratiate him into the world of Trump, in a sort of use-a-nonce to catch-a-nonce strategy. Really? But there's little evidence that that would actually work, and it's more likely he was simply being rewarded for his support of Morgan McSweeney and others, in a sort of quid pro quo arrangement. Okay. But in the end, his sketchy past came back to haunt Starmer, in what can only be described as a blindingly obvious shooting yourself in the face debacle. And what's all this about vetting? Well, it's quite simple. Either Number 10 were desperate to appoint Mandelson, but if Ollie Robbins had explained there'd been some vetting issues, they'd have immediately withdrawn him, or Ollie Robbins understood that Number 10 didn't want to hear about any vetting issues because they were desperate to appoint Mandelson and didn't want to withdraw him. Or everyone assumed that everyone else understood that Mandelson was super dodgy, but they assumed that's why he was being appointed in the first place. So where does this leave the Prime Minister? Well, as Ed Miliband said earlier this week, Prime Ministers are only human, and humans make mistakes, before presumably adding in his head, but you could change which human was Prime Minister, perhaps even trying a human called Ed Miliband. Thank you, Jonathan. Sir Keir has every reason to say, thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as the ceasefire between the US and Iran is extended, we ask, does Donald Trump have a plausible strategy to extricate himself from this war? And would he understand half of the words in that sentence?